So we've got some programming related questions that we are going to start out with. Number one, how often should somebody work out to maintain your body fitness? Do you need to work out 7 days a week? Also, how do you keep progressing? Because at some point your body will get tired of doing the same thing. Like, how often should we change our workouts?
So the first part, we typically start everyone off at 3 days a week. And this kind of goes into this framework in physiology called fitness fatigue. And what it is essentially fitness is a slower responding thing, and fatigue is a more faster acting. So if let's say I go through a workout, I'm really sore, we want that to last a very short period of time, and the effect we get from that of, hey, increasing strength or increasing fitness, that should last longer. And we can build in this positive relationship between the fitness adaptation and the fatiguing effect as we go through. So the simple answer off of that is every 48 hours, try to get a strength training session. That kind of equates out to more times than not, 3 times a week. But if we expand that out through an entire year, what that is consistency. It's setting a very realistic goal of training 3 times a week for 50 to 52 weeks a year, and that should do the trick. Now, the parts of the second question is, when should we change it up? So the body is really adept at finding some sort of, neutrality or homeostasis, right? It's really good at figuring out how to respond. The first thing we should talk about above all else is, does your program have 2 big principles? And principles are true without context. Does it have progressive overload, meaning that we're going up in some form of intensity, repetition, or volume, or making something more dense, of doing the same work in a shortened period of time, or doing more work in the same period of time? Do I have that built in my program? And that tells me when I should or shouldn't change. For most people, it's about a 4-week period of time we want to stick with a certain protocol, or 4 exposures to a workout before we start to change that up. And if I can progressively overload within those 4 weeks, great. What we see with more inexperienced or newer people, we can stretch out to 8 weeks. With more experienced people or elite level athletes, we might want to consolidate down to 2 weeks. So what we're doing is we're maximizing whatever that exercise set rep tempo scheme is. And then from there, we're figuring out when that window we can actually go without having diminishing returns. And then we're going to change up the set rep tempo or exercise selection to keep constantly driving adaptation. So bigger thing to look at is, do I have progressive overload? And then do I have progression from one block to the next?
And so you answer this, but just to underline it, the reason that we don't want to go a 7-day-a-week program is because it cuts into our rest time, our recuperation time.
Yeah, that what we see a lot is when people go high frequency or going multiple days in a row, is that fatigue, which should be nominal, relatively speaking to that fitness adaptation, becomes inverted. That we have longer fatigue and we have shorter fitness adaptations. So when we start to recover, we can't really get our next workout in because we're already at such a fatigued state, and we start to get diminishing value from the workouts that we're doing. Going into that progressive overload, if I can't make continuous and steady progress over the course of four weeks, then I'm really not getting the value that I want from it. It could stem from, I'm just going too often.
Which is counterintuitive, because fitness, I think the general belief is the more I do, the better, or the harder I work, the better.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is that's not the case. It's not just how the body works.
Mm-hmm. Well, we make analogies all the time, but thinking about it like investing, like if you work with your financial investor and he or she says, you should put your money in these stocks, you're going to get the biggest return. You're like, great, but I want to put my money kind of everywhere, regardless if it doesn't get a good return. It's not a really good strategy, right? So in regards to getting the most value, you want to kind of listen to your body, which is your best analyst, and then people who've kind of made the mistakes over and over again with multiple people of like, too much frequency is a problem unless you're going to lower the intensity. It kind of goes in this whole other second order conversation of the only way you can really do a high frequency approach is to lower intensity and get less value from the workout, which why not just invert it and do a really good workout every other day and get more value over time.
Nice. Next question we have here. Segues off what we were just talking about, but what's the optimal way to add in a supplementary class like conditioning or hypertrophy in Allegiate? We've got other classes called Allegiate Conditioning, Allegiate Hypertrophy, and while still getting enough recovery between your main 3 times a week, either team or strength.
Yeah. So for context, we tell everyone 3 days a week of team or strength. And team is a higher threshold strategy utilizing more advanced periodization. And strength is it's the same periodization structure, just using lower threshold exercises like a goblet squat instead of back squat. And we make that decision off a biomechanical screen. So if we find someone has some limitations and pain, asymmetries, or restrictions in range of motion, doing higher threshold strategy is probably not a great call. But that's our base, right? We want to do 3 days a week of those every other day. Now, we complement that with, all right, what do you want to do? Hey, I want to gain weight. Okay, we probably want to get a hypertrophy class, just a 60-minute upper body focused, trying to improve lean muscle mass in your upper body. So that would be that, and that would be your 4th day. So you're going 3 teams of strength. I want to gain lean muscle mass. You're going to go to hypertrophy to complement that. Or I want to lose weight. Okay, great. You're going to go 3 teams of strength, and then you're going to go to conditioning, which is just a large work or higher amount of work or period or exercise in a period of time that we do, relatively speaking, to hypertrophy. So we're looking at, hey, I want to gain lean muscle mass, go to hypertrophy. I want to lose weight or lose body fat, go to conditioning. And our third offering would be stretch, which is I have something going on biomechanically between a hip and shoulder, restricting range of motion, asymmetries, really not necessarily doing pain. We like to refer out when someone has pain, but we're complementing what we're doing with our three teams or strength with one of those 3 classes. Now, in regards to where you fit that in, start off with where do I get my 3 teams or strength? That's what your basic is. That's what we need above all else. So for a Monday, Wednesday, Friday cadence, a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday cadence, a Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday cadence, start there. And then from there, okay, look at your schedule and look at your goals. I want to gain weight. Where is a hypertrophy class that I can fit into it? And this is where it gets into logistics, not necessarily are going to be the biggest limiting factor, right? So ideally, we'd be able to organize this in a way where we get perfect recovery coming off a total body workout, but that's not really practical or realistic. So what we talk about is get your 3 teams of strength, and then logistically figure out when you can get that class to meet your goals. It's not the perfect solution, which we offer privates to kind of answer that thing as well. But the reality is just a matter of looking at this from a macro perspective. Getting 3 teams or strengths is going to cover all your bases from a function, a stability, a strength, a cardiovascular, everything you want. And then your goal is specific to you. And you have to find a way to get that 4th class in there, relatively speaking to that goal. Not always going to be perfect, but as long as we're getting 4 of those, we're going to move that closer to that goal while improving our health and function over time.
If we say 2 to 3 sessions a week, if we're hitting our 3 strengths and 1 hypertrophy, okay, I'm getting into 4. Should I hit my 3 strengths and 2 hypertrophies?
So that's another really good question. What we're going to run into potentially is some asymmetries and some sort of structural imbalance. So one of the things that's nice about a total body strength training program is it's covering upper body push, pull, hinge, and squat. Where hypertrophy is just going to be upper body, push and pull, and we're probably going to limit what we're going to get is an impact systemically on our lower body. So having that balance of upper body, lower body, training total body is going to get a really good value for you, and it's not necessarily going to create down the road problems. So I would, above all else, say, okay, let's start with 3 strengths, and then let's get that hypertrophy around that. If you get 3 strengths for 3 out of the 4 weeks, and we get that 4th week, we can get an extra hypertrophy class in there, I think that's a better alternative than trying to get 2 hypertrophies in there. And it's the same workout each time, where strength is going to be 3 different workouts broken up over the course of a microcycle or a week.
And so if we are going 2 to 3 times a week, what's a good per week lifting weight increase to aim for? So for folks not familiar with our program, Progressive Overload, we are trying to increase week over week something, be it weight, it's often weight. I'm trying to go maybe 1 kilo higher or 5 kilo higher week over week. So the question is, if I'm going 2 to 3 times a week, what's a good per week lifting weight increase to aim for percentage wise?
Yeah, so the generic pro answer is it depends. But the reality is we follow the schema called relative intensity, where we're trying to incrementally increase intensity over the course of 4 weeks based off of what your projected rep max ability would be. So rep max 100%, so let's say that you could hit 100 kilos for 1 RM. That's your rep max at one rep. But off of that, if I was going to do 3 reps, there's a rep max associated with it. So typically we subtract about 5% for every rep that you would do. So if you wanted to do 3 reps, that would be roughly 90% of your 1 RM you could do. Now, with that being said, is we can further take that number and extrapolate out a rep max on that given day. So we're not working at maximal intensity, so we can learn the movement, get familiar with the set and rep scheme, and we can build that out. And we follow this scheme of going 70, 80, 90, and 100% relative intensity. So your rep max, maximal intensity on that week 1 should be theoretically 70%. Now, what that means is it probably is going to equate to about 6 to 8 reps more so than you could do when you finish that set. Meaning that if I was going to do a set of 6, I'm going to use a weight that I could hit for 12. And what that does is allow me to pull those reps away and get closer and closer to that true rep max. Now, in regards to what the progression should be, we like to build it off of, it's hard to say, hey, what's your 6 RM with a rest pause between 3-4, 4-5, 5 and 6 with a 3-3 exo tempo. No one knows that, and you shouldn't. But what we can do is start off light and then progressively add. So we'll ask you, how hard was last week's workout based off your RPE? If it was a 2 or 3, we could probably take a bigger jump, a 5, 10 kilo jump. If it was a 5 or 6, meaning it was very challenging or hard, we want to make a smaller jump. Now, if you miss reps or if your bar speed got below 0.3 meters per second, we might not make a jump at all. So we're using these governors as we're going through the workout between RPE, bar speed. We're trying to use this big schema called relative intensity to kind of systematically do it. And over the while, as we get more and more familiar with the exercises, you get more and more familiar with the protocols, you have a better gauge week 1. You're going to be a lot more specific what's going to be an adequate stimulus week 1 based off experience and knowledge, and then you can progress through. But if you're learning the movement pattern, it's just a wild guess, and then it's probably going to be a bigger jump. But if you're really experienced, you know the movement, you know the exercise, and you know the set rep scheme, you're probably going to get a lot closer to that RM, and then we could really get a lot more specific as we go.
How often do we cycle through methods, and how long does each method cycle last?
Yeah, we use a block periodization scheme, meaning that we alternate between accumulation, which is stress through volume, so higher reps, lower intensity, with a counter to intensification, which is stress through intensity. So lower reps, higher intensity. We go back and forth between these 2 blocks over the course of a year cycle, and every cycle is going to be 4 weeks. And the reason why we chose this is, 1, covers a lot of bases, right? That everyone generally has this goal in general populations of looking better and feeling better. So we're going to get a lot from that kind of scheme of getting enough hypertrophy, enough body composition, enough relative strength stuff throughout the course of the year to really check a lot of boxes while we're progressing through. But also, too, it helps build into this changing it up of, it gets really monotonous when you train 52 weeks a year doing the same workout or doing the same generic written on a whiteboard type of deal. This gives us purpose and meaning in a more micro level. Every month we have a new goal and objective. It's going to be volume or intensity based, and that's our priority. So we're going to get as good as we possibly can with that set and rep scheme. And to go to the second part of that question, we find that middle ground. Remember, we talked about it in terms of how often should we change a protocol? 2 weeks for advanced, 8 weeks for more novice or beginners. 4 weeks is that sweet spot. So every 4 weeks we're changing it up, and it goes back into that relative intensity breakdown of 70, 80, 90, 100%, subtracting reps till we get closer and closer to that true rep max, and then it's time to start again, go on to an intensification block or an accumulation block.
Nice. Now I'm going to just check that we're still recording here. Keep going. Okay. Of all the different protocols that we've been doing, which one have we seen the most success with?
I think they've all, it's funny what you judge success off of, right? The people who have this immediate resonance with, oh man, this is what we need, and that subjective assessment, you get that validation from the people going through this. And then the other one too is the one that's most challenging, oh man, it's going to be a serious month, right? And you go to other motivators and drivers, right? We did a whole month of German volume training and Rammstein, right? That's immediately going to resonate with a very memorable month, but to go through what's the most impactful, I would say is the one that we had people show up the most and overall got the best results from over the course of that month, whatever that means, right? We all hit our sets and reps. We hit it with great technique. Everyone understood the mission, and we went out there and did it, and everyone was better for it. So I think that element of what's the most memorable or the best overall month, it's largely dependent upon the people doing it and what they perceive it to be. I'd be lying to say that there's certain months like German volume training month or El Diablo month that we're just fun, you know. And then you collectively see people like hitting PRs or doing the first time they do a pull up, and like that could be just aggregate of all the months they did before and improved, just busting their ass.
But that one becomes the favorite.
Yeah. So I would say the one that probably is the best is the one that we had the best overall attendance and the best overall results from collectively, whatever that one was. I don't know.
Right.
They're all my favorite. I love all my children. I wrote it, so I'm definitely biased.
Yeah,
It's my favorite book, Ernest Hemingway, like all of them. Yeah, all of them, you know. Yes, I did compare myself programming right away to Ernest Hemingway. Right there with him, man. I'm the Stephen King of strength training, man.
There you go, man.
Calling it.
What type of technology and sensor do we have to monitor the weight of your client? And I believe this person is asking about in the training session, but maybe you could talk about in training and then also in the pre-screening process.
Yeah. So we talked about it before, and this is there's a low budget to high budget strategy. Low budget, it's just simply asking what their wellness is on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being bad, 5 being good. Stress, mood, fatigue, soreness, and sleep quality, and you get a score, right? On a 5 to a 25 scale, how are they on that given day? You can simply just say the impact from training and stress of life is going to have a positive or negative effect on that, right? And we go from that into post-workout RPE. How hard was the day's session? And what we can say is RPE is, by extension, what your heart rate was during the workout, and we could say that was how hard the workout was perceived within your body, right? So those are 2 free things to do. And one of the things that we can look at is if we're on the low end of wellness, like sub 15, we probably shouldn't be going too aggressive with a weight jump week to week, or we should probably think about, hey, just focus on getting a quality day. As Ken Revisit would say, have a good shitty day, right? Like you're sore, you're tired, you're in a bad mood, you don't want to be here, just go through a full range of motion, execute the movement, and whatever happens with the weight, don't worry about it. On the other end, if you reported the super high RPE the last time you did this workout, probably means we shouldn't make a huge jump. Like, how hard was last time? Like, oh my God, it's crawling out of here. It's like a 7 or 8. Okay, we shouldn't make a huge jump, because what's going to happen from there, you're going to have to start to compensate or compromise the movement integrity to accomplish a job, right? Your physiology is not going to be able to recover in time, and your biomechanics are going to suffer, and then risk goes up. So we can use that. That's free right there. Everybody can do that at any given time. And we use Bridge to track that over time to see the impact subjectively from everyone in our gym. The other one, a little bit higher budget, is what we use with Vault. We got Force Deck, we got Nordboard. We're actually getting a third piece called Dynamo, which is an amazing name, right? Dynamo, which is a grip dynamometer, right? Where we can see everyone's grip strength on a given day. And we talk about grip strength as a great, like, self-limiting form of exercise, right? If you can't hold it, you can't lift it. So if we're doing a double overhand grip without a hook, you should be able to get a pretty good gauge on what that person's nervous system and potential is on that given day. Now we can quantify that, which you're going to be able to use that. And it's obviously getting a little bit more into the budget end of, can you afford a Force Deck, a Nordboard, and a dynamometer? Maybe, maybe not. But for us, we think it's giving us that much more ammunition to give more definitive direction, as well as to call me as a programmer out as like, am I doing a good job collectively for everybody in here? And our coaches coming in on every given day, like, I don't know what you went through last night. I don't know what you should do. So I'm going to get you on this Force plate. I'm going to get you on this Nordboard. Hey, we're making progress. You're doing great. Everything's up and to the right. Load it up. Hey, we're really down. Things look a little bit static or maybe even regressing. We're going to get bad before we get good. Maybe choose a weight that's reflective of that. And then the final piece, again, budget included, would be gym aware and velocity-based training. And we actually now are at the point, we just call it Coach Gym Aware, where Coach Gym Aware is going to be the final judge and jury of what you're going to do. Bar speed got below 0.3, which is this like threshold of absolute strength, that as soon as we start to get below 0.3 for multiple reps in a row, technique's going to change in a negative way. That we're going to have to find some sort of compensating strategy to help us get through that movement. That's only going to lead to a net negative. We're going to take tension. We're going to take tension away from the muscle that we're trying to target. We're going to start to adjust joints and leverage in a position that's not biomechanically safe. And we're going to start to get to a position where we're not going to get the value from the exercise set and rep scheme. So let's start to adjust. Let's start to use a weight. And it goes into this next concept of a principle of training called critical drop-off. It's when we start to get below 90% of whatever that possession is. From a set and rep scheme, we use rep brackets, but we can use this concept of velocity-based training to keep us honest and on par with whatever it is my potential on that given day. And that's where the final buck stops. If I start to lower at my bar speed where I should be 0.3, the weight is too heavy. We have to either stop or go a lighter weight. And that's why we decide what we do in terms of budgeting during the training aspect.
Should you train differently when you're in a bulk phase versus a cut phase?
I guess it goes into this. So the bulk phase, for the people who don't know, is if I gain a certain amount of mass, that should collectively move my lean body mass up with it, right? So it's this theory of increasing your body mass to such a level that you now increase your lean muscle mass to compensate for it. And then when I start to cut, I just drop my body weight down and hopefully I have more preservation off of that lean muscle mass. I would come back and say this is probably not a very healthy approach in general. I think this is kind of an antiquated approach. I think it feels intuitive, but we find when we get to a certain level of body composition that we become so inefficient, right? We start to lose this thing called GLUT4 transporter sensitivity, which is how we absorb glucose into our muscle cell. We start to diminish mTOR pathways, which is the enzymatic property to increase muscle protein synthesis. We start to recover slower because our cardiovascular fitness is less. We start to become more inflamed, autoimmune, all these things. So the negative aspects of bulking completely offset the potential benefit from increasing your lean body mass with it, right? That we are going to be that. Unless you're playing a body mass specific sport, like offensive line in football, or you're a sumo wrestler, like there's really not much of a need from improving yourself. You're better served from keeping a healthy body composition and staying with that. But with that being said, is hypertrophy is just tension and time. And finding the area where we create the most tension and do that the longest, safest, right? It's why machines exist, because we can target a muscle group and we can create more tension over a longer time and get better results. So if you do have a goal to increase muscle mass overall, ditch the bulking and cutting approach. Just understand what the raw fundamental aspects of increasing muscle mass is and understanding how to leverage time and tension. It's not intensity driven, meaning it doesn't have to be heavy. It just needs to create more tension in that muscle group or overall throughout your body to increase cross-sectional muscle area. And then you go into a nutritional aspect. Yes, we do need to be in a caloric surplus because we're trying to increase body mass. It doesn't have to be an egregious amount. It doesn't have to be 6,000 calories over 6 months. It could be just a 500 calorie increase, relatively speaking, to what your normal BMR plus expenditure is, because that's going to put you in a surplus. It could be increasing things like protein relative to your body mass. It could be increasing things like carbohydrates around training. All these things are scientifically proven to improve your body's ability to put on muscle mass in conjunction with a really good training program that understands the levers, understands how we create tension, understand how can we do that optimally and safely over a period of time.
Nice. Are there changes or methodologies you wish you would have implemented sooner?
Tracking and testing, so the 4-stack, gym aware, velocity-based training, absolutely. Because what it's doing now, and here's the things that we've learned in 5 years here, is we're going to use a 3-day total body strength training program with free weight, closed kinetic chain movement. So we're going to feet on the ground and we're going to move multiple joints at once. And the reason behind that is just really efficient. I can train every muscle group in your body in 3 days. And I can get great results. I can put on muscle mass, I can decrease fat, I can get everything accomplished. It's super efficient. But what the problem is the biomechanics associated with it are the rate limiting step. And if it gets too heavy, or if we're not physiologically prepared for it, we're not going to get the value from that the way we should. We're assuming that everything's going to be perfect from a movement standpoint. It's just not going to be the case. People have different recovery rates. People have different stressors outside of the workout. On top of it, they have different motor patterns. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to create this perfect amount of tension in the right muscle group to get us this outcome that we want over time. So we need this support from tracking and analytics to help us make the best decision on a daily basis.
I would say even on the business end, I would have hired staff sooner. We didn't really have the money to do it, but bringing in front desk and just the benefit of fresh faces, but also learning your systems, implementing, teaching people the way that you do things and getting people up to speed fast enough. So not only can you have more people in the business, but you can iron your systems and processes out, and then you can step back instead of working in your business, work on your business.
Yeah.
That would be one other thing that I would add to that.
Fantastic, yeah.
So back to programming, can you peak at performance and gains?
So peaking is a really, really important thing to understand, and peaking has got to be relative to something, right? What we find with peaking in general, right? So if I'm a bodybuilder, I want as much lean muscle mass that's symmetrical and proportionate with as little body fat as possible, right? So that's peaking right there, right? Peaking in terms of I'm a 100-meter sprinter, I want to run as fast as I can from point A to point B at the specific day, at the specific time. Okay, that's peaking. Now in general, working with general populations, what is peaking? What does that mean? What is that relative to, right? And when you really get down to it, it's, these titrating up or titrating down of goals. And we always go back to how bad do you want it and what are you willing to do for it, right? I really want to lose weight. Okay, how bad do you want it, right? And what are you willing to do for it makes that happen or not? Yeah. So I want to lose 25 pounds for a wedding. That'd be a peaking thing, right? But in regards to that, if Usain Bolt runs a 9.67, he can make millions of dollars. If you lose 25 pounds and you can fit better into your tuxedo for your wedding versus, it's too hard, I got a lot of stress, I don't really want to do it, you're not really willing to do what it takes to do it. So kind of going into this idea of well, what is peaking, and what is it relative? And more times than not, most people just want to kind of get in a consistent rhythm of training and exercise. So I'd say just compartmentalize that and look at, hey, we're going to build in these mini micro goals throughout the week, or get 12 workouts over the course of the next 4 weeks. Or, hey, we're going to do the set rep scheme. I want you to get as heavy as possible over the course of 4 weeks in this. And that's a peak. And then you just reprioritize next 4 weeks. I'm going to build momentum. We talk about the habit formation of, hey, sleep 8 hours, drink plenty of water, half your body weight in ounces of water, eat 8 servings of vegetable, be mindful with what you're eating. Just do that for 4 weeks straight. And if you do that, essentially it's a huge stressor for someone, but imagine getting 4 weeks of that. In the sense, that could be a huge paradigm shift for some. And that's a peak for some people, in my opinion, Right. So I'd say from the peaking standpoint, we're leveraging a high performance model, which I think is important to use, right? And that's what we built our whole business around, is what we did as college and professional strength conditioning coaches, into, hey, everybody should have this approach to training in general, into a lot more redundant, a lot more long-term thing. So this idea of motivation and incentivization and goal setting and peaking, kind of has to take some liberties in that regard of all right, we need to figure out how this applies in a setting. And that's why we really centered on block periodization and habit formation and just compartmentalizing and thinking about what is going to be the non-negotiables over a longer period of time. And then when you get to Jan 1 or you got a wedding or you have some thing that you really want to lose weight for, okay, it's time to get serious. Let's talk about your calories, let's talk about your macros, let's talk about really some really important things you should be tracking in the weight room to really optimize this next 4 to 8 week period.
There's a lot of information out there about working out, but I still get confused about recovery time. Since working out at Allegiant, I got an Oura Ring, and usually my recovery time is suboptimal. How is one supposed to recover? Especially having an active kid, I'm trying to work out, and it's really hard to find time to be low key. Would love to know more about optimal recovery time, what that looks like, and why it's important.
So I guess suboptimal recovery is, what's that relative to? So if you were starting off, and what they're building readiness off of is HRV, which is your heart rate variability.
They being Oura?
Yeah, or Whoop or any of them, and resting heart rate, which is your ambient heart rate or your resting when you're waking up in the morning. So those two metrics are really governing what they're considering readiness. Now the question would be, let's say that when you got that Oura Ring, that HRV was really low and that resting heart rate was really high. So it's always going to say, generally speaking, that you're going to be suboptimal readiness, right? So the readiness is going to be on a 1 to 100 scale. Anything below 80 probably means you should take it easy. But that's going to be contingent upon what your baseline metrics were. So over time, we should see general improvements. And this is why it's so important that we tell everyone, train every other day. The idea of I need to go every single day is just it's not sustainable, and it's not actually considerate of the way people's physiology works. So when we look at it from the big, where do I go, where do I start? One, train every other day, every 48 hours. If you're struggling to recover between that, I would definitely complement what we're doing with that with some different things like rest and nutrition and sleep management, but I also potentially look at our stretch class as an area to improve your mobility, because one of the things that we talk about with heart rate variability is variability in general is important. So if I can move better without restriction, pain, or asymmetry, you're probably going to be getting more from the workouts. It's like a compounding interest strategy. And if I have better variability, meaning that I can hit high heart rates really well, but I can also sustainably hold low heart rates really well, that when I go to bed, my heart rate's sub 50, that when I'm going for a long walk, I can keep my heart rate under 70, 80 beats per minute, that I can work within larger bandwidths and I can get better function. So in order to how to manage this, one, let's look at this. All right, that's a number. It might be your baseline. It might be just where you're at to start. It's not necessarily like a direct reflection off of overtraining from something specifically. It's just where your fitness levels are and your overall HRV and heart rate, resting heart rate is. And then from there, complement it. Improve your mobility, improve your flexibility, improve your soft tissue. Go to stretch. Improve your cardiovascular fitness. Get long walks and do meditation, do breathing, do journaling, do things that are parasympathetic in nature. Get better sleep. Go to bed earlier. When it starts getting light or dark out and the light starts to go away, melatonin should start being produced and you should start thinking about going to bed. And get people on board with that too. I have one kid and the second one on the way. My family knows I'm starting to make my wet bed at 8. Like, I'm going to bed. You guys can stay up, but I'm not doing it. And over time, hopefully it starts to resonate with them of like, okay, we should all go to bed earlier. We have to kind of like collectively be in this together. And we can't fight each other on it. And, there's probably not much good happen after like 9 o'clock. So, families, moms, dads, kids, everybody probably should be thinking about going to bed, especially when we're seeing the outcomes of low HRV and very high resting heart rates and struggling to recover between workouts, and then just being consistent with it, hydrating and doing all the things basically and ready over a period of time.
I think you said it too in terms of like losing weight or having a specific goal. How bad do you really want this?
Yeah.
And if it's a pretty ambitious goal, the amount of time and dedication that it's going to take, your timeline, you're looking at months.
Yeah.
Of making pretty dramatic sacrifices different than your current lifestyle.
Yeah.
Where this, I don't know who this person is, but they, look, if you have a couple glasses of wine each night, that's negatively impacting your sleep. Yeah. And there might be a habit that you didn't know was negatively impacting your sleep.
Yeah, we hear it all the time. Oh, I have to have a couple glasses. No, you don't. Yeah. It's not like you're not going to die if you don't have it. Yeah. I get you want it, and it gets a stress reduction. It might be something you bond with your partner with, but it doesn't necessarily need to happen. And maybe just a matter of conversation of like, is there anything we could do to help unwind and relax that doesn't include alcohol? But it goes back to how bad do you want it? Right. I kind of want it, I just don't really want to make any changes. Then you don't really want it. And that's a hard thing to hear. And I don't want to seem callous and cold to the person that did this, but like the reality is, it's like, you can't expect something you're not willing to make changes for, and like, I want to make a lot of money, but if I'm not willing to do anything to make money, I probably not going to get it,
Right.
I think that kind of like, hopefully like in that end, it's, we're kind of always responsible for our own outcome and everything. And I want this gym to be where the buck stops for everybody and the answer is going to be here in some way, shape or form. But again, like no matter what you do from a health and fitness perspective, the responsibility ultimately relies on that person. Are you going to come 3 times a week, for 52 weeks a year? Are you going to drink water, eat vegetables, be mindful with what you're eating? Are you going to be in a caloric deficit if you want to lose weight, caloric surplus if you want to gain weight? Are you going to do that repeatedly over time? Are you going to fight like hell to maintain technique, get that tempo, get as much weight on possible each week over a period of time? Or are you going to listen to your body like, oh man, the force dex says I'm really down. Probably don't have a great day. Why is that? I had a crappy night's sleep the night before. I went partying all weekend. Like that has a direct cause and effect relationship.
Yeah.
And that happens. That's part of it. But if we're not willing to make those changes to get better training and better inputs over a period of time, it's not going to change, no matter what you do, who you're doing it with, or where you're doing it.
Right. A couple nutrition questions here. Favorite pre-workout snack?
Yeah, I think this is specific to body composition and honestly this other aspect of what we're doing. So accumulation blocks, higher volume, lower intensity. It's going to be very glucose and glycogen dependent, right? Where this is our storage form of carbohydrate and our immediate energy source, right? So if I have good body composition, meaning I'm sub 10% body fat, I'm probably going to handle carbohydrates pre, intra, and post pretty well. We're probably going to use them really well. Because one thing we find when people manage glycogen and can replenish it fast is they put on muscle and burn fat faster. It just is what it is. When we're doing glycogen dependent things, Okay, carbohydrates are going to be a really powerful change of that. And a couple of different ones where you really, depending on what your flavor is, like if I work out really early in the morning and I don't have time to eat a meal, okay, a MRP or a meal replacement might be good. So like UCAN, non-insulin impacting starch, really good place to start. Generally speaking, pretty much everyone can include that for glycogen-based workouts like accumulation blocks. A little bit of protein, 10 to 20 grams from either whey or plant-based. If you can get a meal in, you can get some low glycemic carbohydrates, some quick-acting proteins like egg whites, and then potentially like oatmeal or something like that. Really good place to start. Not everyone's going to want to do that at 5 o'clock in the morning, so meal replacement might be good. Intra-workout, if we're burning through a lot of glycogen, probably start with amino acids. It's a really good place to start. Like amino acids, leucine and glutamine help spare glycogen depletion because we can use that immediately as energy substrates, as well as they increase this thing called mTOR pathways post-workout, so I can improve protein synthesis post. So I can get leucine, isoleucine, valine, which is branched chain amino acids, with the rest of the amino acids, all 9 essential, through an amino acid supplement. And then maybe getting some glucose in there while I'm training to help spare that. So Momentous has a fuel supplement that's just I think it's 3 monosaccharides, which is a quicker digesting carbohydrate. And then post, if I really depleted all my glycogen, I probably want to get myself a really good post-workout meal, including a lot of high glycemic carbs, so things that quickly digest and the protein. We want to avoid fat post-workout, because what that will do is slow gastric emptying, and we won't absorb those nutrients as quickly. But going back to the original question, if it's an accumulation workout and I want to get some really good carbohydrates and some sort of protein quick, whether it's an MRP or a shake of some sort, or if I can get a meal in beforehand, great. Also, depending on what your tolerability of that is. If I'm a certain body composition and above, we just need to be more conscious of carbohydrates, probably need to supplement with more amino acids. On the other end, intensification block, this is interesting because it's ATP PCR. So it's adenosine triphosphate, which is the immediate energy substrate, and phosphocreatine. So this is not going to deplete glycogen as much, but it's going to be definitely a lot faster acting. So the more carbohydrates I have present, and this is the area that gets really convoluted with a lot of the peri-workout nutrition. So there's a lot of information on intermittent fasting or potential ketogenic diets are beneficial. They absolutely are. None of that's including anyone who's doing any high performance strength training protocols. It's just people who need to change body composition without any exercise interventions, or people with neurological disease who aren't including strength training into their life. So, I heard a really good line from Brad Schoenfield, who's kind of the world's most authority on hypertrophy. And he's like, look, ketogenic diets and fasting, they're not the panacea. And I was like, that's a great word. And he's like, look, mTOR and protein synthesis is really contingent nutritionally off of having enough carbohydrates and storage, glycogen. And if we don't have it, it's going to prioritize fat first and foremost. And if I don't have carbohydrate storage, it's going to go to ketones. I'm not going to build a really great deal of muscle. I'm just not. We'll produce these things called AMPK pathways, which is going to be the opposite of mTOR pathways. And we're just not going to be intuitively, like, if I don't have enough energy, your body's not like, darn, I need to build muscle after this hard workout. That just should make sense logically. Now, if I have enough carbohydrates and I'm in a surplus, then I can help build muscle. But then the other side of it is from a performance standpoint, if I'm getting to the tail end of that workout, we've all kind of felt it, minute 40 to 50, where I'm just gassed, I have nothing left. Imagine when we did that metabolic circuit, 3 sets of 10 every 80 seconds, we're doing another set. You get to, K1, and we're like, oh man, I don't got anything left. Like, that's glycogen depleted. If I have more carbohydrates before and things that help spare glycogen depletion during a workout, and I can drive through that last series or that minute 40 to 50 and get more out of it, you're going to get more value over time. And I get, it's quick, it's easy to do intermittent fasting and carbohydrate restriction, but in the end, it's going to diminish performance. We have to look at this from a chicken or egg perspective. Like low fat, low carbohydrate diets are great in some regards, but in terms of strength training and performance in the anaerobic environment, probably not conducive. So to answer your question, carbohydrates, whether it's low glycemic or non-insulin impact, if you need to lose weight or burn fat, probably should figure that out. Amino acids, if we can or don't, we eat carbohydrates to help preserve that, but the answer is always going to be carbohydrate driven, really.
Got it. You covered this, but just to hash back and hit it again, for a morning workout class, what's the best food to eat before and the best food to eat after? And does it need to be within an hour of your workout?
So in the morning, we kind of covered that one pretty extensively. Yep. In regards to the hour after, I would say, it's going to go into this kind of the research is pretty now like lightened up in terms of like the immediacy, like this post-workout window. But I would say this, that your amino acid pool, which is the amount of amino acids you have circulating based off of your consumption of amino acids, is always going to be important for performance and recovery because there's so many things contingent upon amino acid availability. So, talked about leucine, we talked about isoleucine and valine, the branched chain amino acids. Glutamine is another really big one, which helps rebuild your gut wall. It's also a pretty immediate energy substrate that we use. Tyrosine and phenylalanine are really important for things like dopamine. So amino acids have a really critical step. So if we do something that's anaerobic or high sympathetic driven, and we just depleted a bunch of protein, we're broken down a bunch of proteins, our amino acid pool's depleted, we should probably get protein in pretty soon, if not immediate, or if during, right? If we supplement with amino acids during workout, kind of changes the timeline on that a little bit. And then the same thing too, if I deplete a lot of glycogen, it's not like, oh man, as soon as I'm done, I'm sucking down a high glycemic shake and I'm getting my blood glucose levels jacked up above 100 and insulin levels start circulating and I'm just going to start to get huge immediately. But it definitely helps. It definitely helps. And if you wait and you stall on it, what's the likelihood you're going to actually eat? And people who are waiting to 4 hours afterwards, they're probably diminishing a pretty good opportunity to help with the recovery. So I would say closer the better. Time your amino acids, should be getting that in all day. Carbohydrates based off of glycogen-related activities and quicker, closer to the workout, probably the more beneficial.
Is there an ideal body fat percentage for a fit female? And while we're talking about it, we might ask for a fit male as well.
Yeah, I would say, so honestly, we have a pretty very accurate body composition analyzer called Body Metrics, and it's ultrasound based. I would put it right there, right behind DEXA in terms of the most accurate. It's very unforgiving. And we can get you on a bioelectrical impedance, which is basically sending electrical current throughout your body, and water is a transducer, so the more water you have, the more it perceives you're leaner. So muscle stores more water than body fat. So if we have a fast electrical conduction, it seems that we have more muscle mass than we do fat mass. Problem is that has a high degree of variance from one test to the next. And that kind of gives a false perception of what's a healthy and what's a good body composition. There's another metric out there called body mass index, which is developed by insurance companies. So it's height and weight ratio. You can look at waist to hip ratio. These are all like correlated to metabolic disease and cardiovascular disease. But if I'm 5'8", I'm 200 pounds, I'm going to be type 2 obese, which isn't true. So you get this kind of like very mixed bag of what people perceive as a healthy body composition. And there's a certain point of being too lean that's unhealthy over time as well. Right, we lose organ function, we lose these pathways that are critical. So there's a window here. We want to be a certain body composition that is healthy and manageable over a period of time that we can work really hard to hold, but also to not break our back to be at constantly year round. I would say for males, 8 to 12 on our body metrics is a pretty healthy one. I mean, we have plenty of coaches here. I'm looking at one right now who's running around at 4 to 6 year round and just works his tail off and he's really disciplined, and that's good. I'm happy he's that. But the reality is that's not realistic for a lot of people. So I'd say 8 to 12 for most males on our body metrics. If you're not there, just something to work on, right? You're not less than, you're just, okay, now you got something to focus on. Improve your diet, improve your consistency. Drink more water, eat more vegetables, be more conscious of what you're eating, sleep more. And then for females, on our scale with the body metrics, I would say 16 to 24 is, and I know it's a little bit wider of a gap, but it's also too, fat is more important for women. There's a lot more estrogenic pathways, and there's a lot more downsides to being lean for women, from things like female athlete triad, where they lose certain really important processes hormonally, and they lose menses, and they lose their natural processes they have throughout the month. And to be quite frank, I think we should focus on performance and how you feel. And body composition, just a good way to kind of corroborate that and support that. But again, males 8 to 12, and that changes part of the year and constant testing. It's why we offer for free as a member here, which is keeping tabs on it. And don't beat yourself up about it in the end of the year where you're having holidays and traveling and, okay, got to get back on the horse and do it again and get back down to 12 below, And then for females, 16 to 24, pretty good's healthy. And then if we're making progress week to week in the weight room, feel better, clothes are fitting better, it's the bottom line. Really, it's what matters the most.
Nice. Last one. From a business and marketing standpoint, What ways did you target and reach the gen population audience in the early days of Allegiate to get the name out there besides the reputation that you have? What worked and what didn't? I'll take this one to start. The joke we usually say is we didn't find one way that worked. We found 1,000 ways that didn't work. We put every idea up on the table, and then we one by one just tried it. And if it was working, we did more of it. If it wasn't working, we thought to ourselves, is this not working because it's not a good idea, or did something go wrong in the way we attempted it? But pretty much it was like, if it's not working, we're not going to do it because there's too many options up on the board for us to try. And it was just in the early days, figuring out what worked and what didn't. I think our background in having a figurehead like Tim, we leaned into in the beginning, and it was a credibility establisher and authority builder. But it wasn't always the reason like people really got into this place and sank their teeth into it.
Super humbling, right? Like you're like, oh, I'm a head strength coach. I'm a big deal in my own little world, and everyone's like, I don't understand why that's relevant to me.
Well, and that was the thing is like, it's why, okay, but what are you going to do for me? And it was I think that opened our eyes in the beginning, and it really makes you figure out, all right, what exactly is it about the reputation or the experience that resonates with that person that's walking in here, and figuring out what the hot button issues are that people care about, that you're very versed in, or we were very versed in experience, and framing it in the right way to be able to talk to those people. But honestly, in the early days, to reach the general population, I mean, we were talking to people on the street. We were passing out business cards at the Strand. We were going to where the most people were and trying to just talk to them and seeing if that was working. And, it was hard. Yeah. We were putting signs up on our business that said, with a URL, we joke about it. It says it's on. It made no sense, but we put it on the building, pushed to a URL, captured the contact, told a little bit about our story in terms of who we are, what we do, why we're doing it, and framing it. And hey, by the way, this is how this all benefits you. And having that filter of what's in it for me being the customer. And if you can take what you do and frame it in a way that is very clear of like, oh wow, this is how I would benefit from this, the customer, the prospect, that's probably the best first starting point.
Yeah, and I would add to it, and I think maybe this question's coming from a person who owns their own gym. We made no concessions with general populations. Like, we built this to train adult gen pop. And I think a lot of gyms out there are doing that supplementally or after the fact, when they're training athletes at the peak times or training other groups at peak times, and they're trying to fill in gaps in their day with adult gen pop. Like, how would that feel to you if you were a marginalized group going to a business? Like, oh, we don't really want you as a customer, but we'll let you come in at this time. Like, how would you get traction on that? Like, imagine if I had a restaurant and I said, hey, only adult gen pop could come in between these times.
Nice.
Would I go there? And I think that's the difference. It's like, we really set out to be that answer for the former athlete that was done playing. And by extension of that, we thought this is the best way to train in general, and that should include everybody, from someone who just never touched a weight before, someone who's running on the weekends, to that person who played in the NFL who's now retired and lives in the area. Like, we thought this is the best way to train, and we opened it up to everybody, and we never made any concessions on that. So much so that we have pro athletes contact us, like, you're gonna have to work around their schedule.
Right.
And we do that still to this day. Like,
right.
You got this time to come, sorry.
Right.
And they come back and say, like, interesting, like, yeah, because you're not our primary business. I don't think many gyms do that. And there is an element of, like, the aspirational quality of having an elite pro athlete coming through your facility, or someone who gets a D1 scholarship and building off of that. But it still doesn't change the fact that you go to that person that might be a potential customer. It's hard enough to get them interested in your thought process or believing in the first place to say, yeah, you can only come at 11. We don't have any groups in. Like, imagine how you would feel on that, Right. So I would come back and say, if you do really want to attack the gen pop market and put a dent in that universe, like, you got to make it a priority, because it's so competitive. Because there's so many gyms that are focusing on that area that do make it their priority, and you're already lost before you even started if you're not gonna.
Awesome. That's it.
Hell yeah.
Done.